Hello, my name is Jerry Ross. I'm a local painter here in Eugene, and I've been associated with New Zone since its early inception. And I'd like to welcome you, the public, the community, to get to know New Zone better. I refer to it as the People's Gallery because it's very open to input and has a history and certain kind of resistance. We housed the Salon de Refusé for many years. Again, not in opposition to the Mayor's Art Show, but in contrary to some of the BS that went on associated with that show in its early days. Anyway, the Salon de Refusé went on for 20 years or so, and the New Zone is like that. Salon de Refusé was very experimental. Nobody had tried that before. So New Zone celebrates experimental art that's a little offbeat, has an edge. We like to refer to ourselves as the avant-garde of Eugene, which we very presumptuous because we're not really that. Some of us wish we were, but there are many of us who are on the edge, in my opinion, making statements that matter, especially in these times, because we're not living in ordinary times. This exhibit here in the Klausheimer room, which is an exhibit of new works. So, I have a studio, and every once in a while that studio fills up, and I believe in exhibiting, getting it out, let people interact, and helps you grow as an artist to see what the public thinks. So we had an opening first Friday here, and it was just jumping. It was people all over the place. I saw one of the bardos, and I'll explain what a bardo is here in a minute. But anyway, I'll reconnect to that thought. But this is called Mostra d'Arte. In Italy, a mostra is an art exhibit. It's a very special word, Mostra d'Arte. Usually means fine arts. So this is an exhibit of fine arts. So what is fine arts? And so this is not done necessarily for commercial benefit, mostly for the art, for the expression, and for truth, saying truth. Truth to power in some cases. So you're not getting a lot of revenue back unless the people support it. And the people on First Friday, they supported. They were enthusiastic. They brought their little kids. It's wonderful to see the little children interacting. In fact, one little kid, I don't know, he could have been about 9 years old. He comes up and he says, Mr. Ross, I like your realist paintings just as much as I like your non-realistic paintings. From a 9-year-old? Okay, something's happening here. So anyway, I have fun with this, but here I put a palette on display, and it's for sale, believe it or not. So this is an artifact of an artist. So it kind of represents the entire life in the studio of the artist. These bright colors are, this is oils. Oil paint, like no other medium, has a certain texture, a certain gritty texture, and that's oil-based. So the element of oil is very important. And anyway, it ends up with this exquisite bouquet of Luma's colors that kind of summarize this idea of color theory that we painters study. Starting with the primary colors into the tertiary colors, the complementary colors. And so the principles of color mixing is represented here on this palette for those who study color theory. But anyway, it's just being sold as an artifact of the studio. So here's a little poster for this show. And we tried to set up the room to match the poster, because the poster was the original vision or concept of the show. So in the middle is this landscape, which, when we're filming the opposite wall from where we are right now, then you'll have a chance to see that, because here we cannot. But this particular landscape is done in my style that I call American Verismo, which I'll explain later, but basically, to sum it all up, it's based on Italian feeling in fine arts, especially painting, Italian painting, and those ideas associated with that. And then I have over here on the right some examples of this, supposed to be featuring new works. So we have a bardo, we have a portrait of an Italian noble, which is done in the classic Italian style. And then we have a caricature of Malcolm X here in the lower right-hand corner. So that's the final wall of the exhibit, which is called the political wall. And we'll get to that as we move on. So we're just kind of sliding over here. So we're just picking up highlights here. We get to the question of what is a bardo. And here's a good example here of a bardo. Dreamy bardo is, like the name implies, it's a universe. The head is a universe. And it's very favorable to, in these pinks and oranges and yellows, kind of a dream world of happiness and balance, harmony. Mm-hmm. So if somebody uses this particular bardo, they get those vibes on their wall coming at you every day. Mm-hmm. So this idea of having a bardo hanging in your home. So what is a bardo? Bardo is something I just concocted, but it's a good thing. It's like an image that's going to be like an abstract painting, but it's an image that's going to give you positive vibes, because it's based on some Buddhist concepts that are pretty solid, pretty proven. So they have the concept of the Bodhisattva, which Allen Ginsberg and Jack Kerouac made famous. The book On the Road, in particular, they talk about the role of the Bodhisattva. What is it? So it simply means an enlightened being from the Buddhist, coming out of the Buddhist tradition of an enlightened being who has compassion for everybody in the world and sees everything as a united kind of, everything is Buddha, you know, in some sense. So this insight, because of this insight, that makes it very possible to make a statement that, for in this case, relating to the Tibetan Buddhist concept of bardo, which means transition. Transition from being in this life to dying, and then based on karma transitioning. That transitioning is called a bardo, as you go to what's called becoming, okay? Mm-hmm. Becoming, dying and then becoming. However, this is just a metaphor. It's a metaphor of creativity. For example, when you're a painter, you slash something on the canvas, very free and bold, but then you destroy it with a knife. You slash it off, put it on the floor, and you look at what's left, and then you go on top of it again. So that kind of editing is a metaphor, okay, for the creative process itself, in a sense, certain sense. So a bardo then is like a bodhisattva that is emanating this creative power. You'll notice they all have heads, 2 hands, they have a body of sorts, and then they have 2 legs and feet. So they're protectors, they're warriors. They can, okay, well now where's this BS terminology coming from? It's not BS, it's really based on ancient Chinese spirit gods that they believe inhabited, believe it or not, in the roots of vegetables. That's where these spirits lived. So these ancient Chinese nature spirits were demons of sorts that could be protectors. They could give you good vibes. So that's part of the meaning of what I'm viewing my invention called a bardo. And it's meant to be hung in the home and you get those healing vibes. They all have different names, they all have different personalities. You have to select a bardo that matches your personality. So I welcome everybody to come look at the exhibit and maybe buy yourself a bardo, okay? Everybody should have a bardo in their home. Seriously, yeah, I believe it. Now we're in the part of the exhibit having to do with landscape. And I've been involved in landscape for many, many years, since childhood actually. And I've been involved in what's called plein air painting, which means you go out into the field and you paint from nature. And after doing that for a lifetime, pretty much, and founding a group called Club Machia, where we have classes and excursions to go paint together. Now I've had, because of age and some vision loss, to be honest with you, doing my landscapes differently, using a acrylic marker, often a black acrylic marker, and a assortment of very bright and cheery colors acrylic markers, which are you can get at the University Art Store there. And anyway, we could start. Let's see. This is a good place to start, I think. So I'm doing these bardos informally, like on cardboard. And then I started saying, well, I better start doing this for landscape, because I went to do the bardos because I could use a marker. And so I tried my hand at doing these landscapes, and they seemed to work for me, because I had a certain structure that I had understood, let's say, through my work with American Verismo and the Italian principles. Okay, so here I'm using the Italian ideas, Italian principles, but I'm not using color as much. Not using paint until I got to watercolors. But I started off just with the markers themselves. Okay, and no watercolor. And the idea is to make a convincing landscape that is three-dimensional, but is abstracted and retains a certain structural integrity that we saw in Cezanne, or in a certain solidity of some kind. Okay, we're talking about structure and solidity of the lines and the balance, and something that you can sense. Okay, so you sense this sense of solidity, but it can't be expressed. It's got to be expressed with line. That's the trick. So that's very hard to pull off. So anyway, I think that's what I'm doing here, at least in my own opinion. And I like the way the vibrant acrylic colors change the landscape. They make your eyes go, wander around and jump around and visit those lines and those shadings that give it the structure it is. So what is the Italian word macchia means the overall harmony of your darks and whites. Your lights and darks, I should say, to be more articulate. Your lights and darks. So the overall harmony of your lights and darks the Chinese would call your yin yang, okay? Your harmony, your balance of opposites. Because you're dealing with dark and light, you're dealing with, but here's the trick, there's some light inside of the dark, there's some dark inside of the light. There's never, nothing is ever purely dark or purely white. There's always the other inside of the other. So that's called the intermingling of opposites. So that's what I'm trying, and because of my Buddhist background, I'm trying to achieve this kind of spontaneous expression of a landscape. So these are done very quickly. And that accords with the Italian rapid painting style under the I Macchiaioli of Tuscany. That's how they paint it. So here's a lighter version and a lighter marker. And then here, boom, I'm starting to add watercolor. So if this keeps my interest up, which my interest wanders a lot, but hopefully I'll go more in this direction. And because I like the softness of it. It's expressing something that I don't know, I feel I need to express. And here's another bardo. They're all over the place. You can't escape them, I warned you. You cannot escape the bardo. Now we've moved to the main landscape that was on the original poster. And I started talking about that being the central concept of the show. Because even though this is my main art, my main mode of expression, and I'm still attempting to paint like this as best I can. I haven't stopped, but I do have more visual limitations than I've had before. But anyway, this was done at least a couple years ago, so this is not a new works in that sense. But it is new works in the last decade, you know. Depends on how you define new works. So. But what's important about this is the luminosity of the light. Because I have this theory that's part of my reason why it's called American Verismo. It's adapting the Italian ideas to American sensibilities, okay? So we see things through an American lens no matter what. And so to me, it's the luminous light of the Pacific Northwest is what captures my attention. As a visual artist and what I feel, what I feel. So when I'm outside here in Oregon, because I didn't grow up here, I grew up in New York and then I transplanted 45 years ago to Oregon. Maybe it's 50 years now, I don't know. Anyway, I've been here a long time. But I've always noticed and always recognized this luminosity of the Pacific Northwest. That means our light is special, it's not ordinary light. So the art we make must reflect that, we must show that. So the artists must stretch themselves. How can you do that? And so you need to start painting in dabs called macchia. And these dabs have to be of sufficient size to create a structure in one dab. Like one dab can create a hedge, or one smear can make a row of trees. And it's got to be in a gesture. And so that then builds up a certain luminosity because you're also working with color to create value. So we want to create everything in a high value. That means a lot of greens and yellows and pinks, you know, those kinds of colors. So that warms it up. So I guess the structure also comes from Italian ideas that you should have diagonals and horizontals in the same painting. That you should have the golden rectangle is in there. Because this adheres to a curvature. Anyway, there's there's the Nautilus shell idea in there structurally. So anyway, a painting should have the stamp, what's called the stamp of composition, should have strong structure. Again, going back to Cézanne's solidity, everything's made up of cones and spheres, cylinders. And the painter must bring that out, bring that forward. But how can you do that when that's been done and you need to do something else? So what I like is the push and pull idea of having a brush stroke that's of a lighter value or hue float or ride on top of a darker background, like Spencer Butte. And that creates the luminosity that's my trick that gave expression to this luminosity. So it's based on my wacky ideas. But I think it works, so that's why I continue with it. At least it works for me. So we're back now in the Klausheimer room, excuse me, and we're on the political wall at this stage. Remember, I said that we would eventually sweep all the way around, and the last wall was going to be the political wall. Well, we can start here. This is a portrait of Donald, and it says "Our President" in quotes, but actually the tag for this is going to be replaced tomorrow. We can one-up Trump on replacing things. I'm replacing my own tag with another tag. Because I went on Facebook and I had a contest to name this guy. And the one that won was the Raving Lunatic. So that's coming here tomorrow, the Raving Lunatic. And you notice the orange hair against the complementary blue color makes it really stand out. And this yellow brightens it up. It's I like that piece. I think it's very endearing. And then we have over here a portrait of a deranged lunatic. Excuse me, the eyes. Portrait of a deranged lunatic. Slightly different title. But this one is done with pencil. This could become an engraving, you know. It probably should be made into a engraving, I think. Because this really catches the guy with his mouth open, raving like a lunatic that he does. And the expression in the eyes and the wrinkled forehead, I think I capture that perfectly. And here, with just no color, you know, you just have line, pure line. There you go, there's the blowhard, perfectly captured. But anyway, I have some things up here. It says Committee of Correspondence. So that was one of my ideas after watching the Ken Burns series on the American Revolution. Because you remember, they had these committees of correspondence, and the purpose of those were the official committees of each colony that would write letters, official letters, to committees in other colonies of the same stature and type. And they would coordinate their resistance against the British, officially, not just surreptitiously, but officially making these agreements that this colony and that colony would in fact unite. It's one thing to say, it's another thing to make it official. All right, so they made it official. So I'm advocating that we do that here, that we have a committee of correspondence here in Oregon that's at the state level, and it communicates to other states seeking similar committees, and if they don't exist, to advocate their being created to coordinate our resistance against this authoritarian takeover that's happening right now. And the reason why I say take this direction, I mean, is I'm in the streets protesting, that's well and good, okay? That'll do something. But to really, let's use the tradition of the American Revolution itself, the American way we did it originally. Let's do it that way. State to state. Now we're talking, if the federal government comes in, we've got the National Guard of 2 states that can come and fight off the U.S. Marines or whoever they are. And then, hey, it's messy and bloody, but you know, we came out of that. We came out of the American Revolution. Are we American revolutionaries still? Probably not. Probably not. I mean, that's a rough way. You saw that series. Mm-hmm. Man, that's unbelievable. We went through that. Unbelievable. Mm-hmm. Anyway, this is, I should know that, right? AOC. This is AOC. Mm-hmm. And she is a lovely young woman, very intelligent, charming, but very telling truth to power, you know. Doesn't take any BS. And I captured her, I think, in a lovely little portrait. I'm offering this for $75. Now, if you can't sell this for $75, then probably you should pack up and go home. But I'm not about to do that anyway. So. This is John Lewis, the famous civil rights worker who became a congressperson. And there's the Malcolm X that was on the poster. And next to that is a charcoal character study. And above that is Vice President Harris, Kamala Harris, when she was running for president recently. I did a caricature of her. So my portrait of Trump, called Malevolence, is a special one. First of all, for just experimenting around, you often come across these, I don't know how to describe them. They're like wood boxes, really, that you can paint on, and because the bottom are wood and flat. So anyway, the idea is that you work informally, okay, so very informally, like you would on a piece of cardboard. You don't care so much. If you bomb it, you bomb it, you know. So, but if you work that way, sometimes then you catch something just in that instant, you know, it took you like 10 minutes, but you caught something. I think I did it that morning, because I was thinking I was tired of looking at his face on television and seeing his face everywhere. And I was trying to say, well, what am I seeing in that face? What am I seeing in that face? I'm seeing malevolence. Mm. You know, there's definitely something wrong with that guy. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Anyway, compare that to this face. So this is the Italian pensioner. And I was over there in Italy, and I took a photograph of this guy standing outside the train station. You see these guys in their blue overalls. It's like a throwback to the 1950s, you know. They're wearing their berets and commingling with one another and commiserating on how they have to live on this pension that, you know, you can hardly get any food, you know. Mm. And so you can see it on their face. There's kind of a sadness. Mm-hmm. But also, you know, it's a real person. You tell it's a real person. Now this one, this is the last one on this wall, and it's not really political as such, but the title is, it's a portrait of an Italian noble. And I'll show you how this connects to, okay. The Italian nobility, if they did nothing else, they established a certain sense of aesthetics, a certain way you behave in public, a certain way you talk, and anyway, carry yourself. And that was the Italian nobility, and of course, their patronage created all this 98% of the world's fine art, okay? So they were onto something. But, so I tried to paint this in the traditional Italian style, classical style. And I don't know who the subject is, doesn't matter. So I capture this sense of nobility, the sense of breeding, in a good sense, not in a racial sense, but in terms of a culture and learning. This kind of breeding within the family by stressing the importance of learning the classics, becoming a person that way through knowledge and through basically a strong understanding of the classics, especially the Greek and so on. So that is the Italian nobility. Now, how does that relate to this? Contrast that to Trump and the way his demeanor, the way he speaks, out of the gutter, you know. And there's a serious disconnect there that, you know, even if you can meet somewhere in the middle, or is there even a middle for that kind of crudeness, I don't know. I'd like to invite everybody in the public to come down to New Zone. This is one of the strongest shows I've ever seen here. There's a really vast variety of artists with their work featured this time around. So come and look at the art, and come into the Klauzheimer room in the back corner of the facility, and I would enjoy your comments. Thank you very much.